Have you ever caught yourself holding back words, not because you were afraid, but because you knew that silence would speak louder? When was the last time you bit your tongue, not out of fear or hesitation, but because you sensed that saying nothing might change more than saying everything? These moments are rare, but they carry a strange, quiet power. In this fast-paced world, silence is often misunderstood. We are constantly told to speak up, to express our feelings, to defend ourselves, to explain, to justify. Social media celebrates those who make noise. Modern culture praises those who are outspoken and quick to react. And yet silence, the kind that is chosen intentionally, not forced, can become an unexpected weapon. I remember sitting in a meeting where opinions flew across the table like arrows. Everyone wanted the last word. Everyone needed to be right. And there I was, sitting quietly observing. I didn't interrupt. I didn't fight to make my voice the loudest. And strangely, by the end of that meeting, people turned to me and asked, "What do you think?" My silence made them curious. My quiet presence gave my words weight when I finally spoke. That moment taught me something important. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is wait. But silence is not always easy. We've been trained to believe that if we are silent, we are weak or invisible. Especially as women, we are told to prove ourselves, to fill the space with knowledge, opinions, and cleverness. But what if the greatest proof of strength is not the ability to talk, but the ability to hold back? Maybe your silence is not a sign of fear or confusion. Maybe it is a strategy. Maybe it is self-respect. After all, the calmest waters run the deepest. So think about this. When was the last time you chose silence and it made you stronger? 1. Why modern society underestimates the power of silence. In today's world, silence is often misunderstood. Instead of being seen as a sign of wisdom or composure, it is too easily mistaken for weakness, uncertainty, or even ignorance. As if staying quiet means you have nothing to say, no value to add, or no presence to offer. But is that really the truth? Or have we simply forgotten the quiet strength that comes with intentional silence? Modern society is noisy by nature. Social media has conditioned us to believe that unless we are constantly posting, commenting, or sharing, we are invisible. The person who speaks the most seems to matter the most. In business meetings, the person who dominates the conversation is often perceived as the leader. In casual gatherings, the one who tells the loudest story grabs the attention. We reward visibility, not necessarily depth. As the old saying goes, empty vessels make the most noise. Sometimes the ones who talk the most have the least of real substance to offer. But in a culture obsessed with sound and visibility, this simple truth gets overlooked. This belief that noise equals strength has spilled over into every part of life. In work, the loud, confident speaker is favored over the thoughtful observer. In relationships, the person who speaks first or speaks fastest is assumed to be more passionate or more committed. In online, the person who posts the most, whether or not they say anything meaningful, gathers the most likes, comments, and attention. No wonder silence feels dangerous. If you do not speak up, the fear is that you will miss an opportunity. This is where the anxiety of FOMO, the fear of missing out, takes hold. We fear that if we stay quiet, we will lose the chance to impress a boss, win an argument, or connect with someone important. Silence in this modern world feels like a gap that someone else will rush to fill. So we fill it first, even when we have nothing truly necessary to say. But what gets lost in all this noise is the value of restraint. Silence is not the absence of thought. Quite the opposite, it is often the sign of deeper thinking, greater care, and stronger self-control. The woman who pauses before she answers is not confused. She's choosing her words. The leader who listens before she speaks is not uncertain. She's gathering insight. The partner who does not argue back immediately is not surrendering. She is weighing what matters and what does not. Yet these moments of strength are often mistaken for hesitation or weakness. I have seen this misunderstanding play out many times, both in my life and in the lives of others. In corporate settings, the quiet ones are passed over not because they lack skill or intelligence, but because they refuse to fight for the floor in meetings where shouting and fast-talking win by default. In personal conversations, people rush to fill every second of silence because they feel uncomfortable with pauses, as if a gap in speech means the connection is breaking. But in truth, some of the deepest connections are made not in words, but in what is left unspoken. Why do we fear silence so much? Perhaps because it forces us to face ourselves. When there is no noise, no distraction, we are left with our own thoughts, our own doubts, our own unresolved feelings. Silence is not only the absence of sound, it is space. And space can be uncomfortable. It can remind us that our confidence was never meant to come from constant talking, but from quiet certainty. For women especially, this fear of silence is double-edged. We are told to speak up, to find our voice, to take up space, all good advice, but sometimes misunderstood. Speaking up is not about talking constantly. It is about choosing the moment when your voice matters most. Taking up space is not about filling the room with sound. It is about being present, even in quiet. Ironically, the woman who knows how to be silent on purpose often holds more power than the one who never stops explaining herself. Silence also has the power to surprise. In negotiations, in relationships, and leadership, unexpected silence can unsettle others, make them wonder what you are thinking, force them to reveal more than they intended. A well-placed pause can change the direction of a conversation. A quiet moment can shift the energy in the room. But these subtle skills are rarely taught and rarely appreciated in a culture that rewards speed over patience, noise over meaning. It is important to remember that silence is a tool, not a trap. It is not something to be ashamed of or afraid of, but something to practice with intention. Like all skills, knowing when to stay silent takes confidence, discipline, and courage. It means trusting that your worth does not depend on constant visibility or endless explanation. It means understanding that your voice carries more weight when you do not waste it on every passing moment. So the next time you feel the urge to fill the silence with words, pause. Ask yourself, is this the right moment to speak? Or is my silence saying something stronger? In that quiet space, you may find not weakness, but strength. Not invisibility, but presence. After all, empty vessels make the most noise, and you and your quiet confidence are anything but empty. 2. When silence becomes strength. There are moments in life when silence is not absence. It is presence. It is not weakness. It is strength. In a world that rewards fast answers and constant talking, we often forget that silence can be more powerful than words. As the old saying goes, silence is golden. When used wisely, silence holds more weight than endless speech. One of the greatest strengths of silence lies in its ability to control emotion. In arguments or tense conversations, most people rush to defend themselves. But those who pause, who take a moment of quiet, gain control over their emotions. They avoid showing anger, fear, or insecurity. Their silence becomes a shield, preventing regretful words. I've learned this through experience. In the past, I reacted too quickly and made situations worse. Now I choose silence first. It helps me think clearly and respond with intention. Silence also sharpens our observation. When you stop planning what to say next, you start truly seeing and hearing the other person. A slight hesitation, a nervous glance, a shift in body language. These quiet signals often reveal more than words. In meetings, conversations, even casual chats, this quiet attention gives you insight and advantage. Moreover, silence makes others uncertain. When you remain quiet, people wonder what you are thinking. This gap of silence leads them to fill it themselves, sometimes revealing more than they intended. Oprah Winfrey uses this technique with her guests, waiting silently after asking a question to draw out deeper truths. Steve Jobs also mastered silence in meetings, saying little but listening deeply. When he finally spoke, every word mattered. For everyday life, this is a valuable lesson. When you stay silent at the right moments, your words become rare and meaningful. You seem thoughtful, confident, and in control, not rushed or careless. Silence is not fear. It is not giving up your voice. It is a choice. It says, I am thinking. I am not easily moved. It invites respect. So the next time you feel the urge to explain or defend, pause. Breathe. Remember, silence can speak louder than words. 3. The consequences of not knowing when to stay silent. Silence is not always the easiest choice, but neglecting its power can come with quiet but dangerous consequences. In a world that celebrates constant communication, endless expression, and the pressure to always have something to say, many forget that excessive talking can turn against the speaker. As the old idiom warns, don't let your tongue cut your throat. In other words, what we say or say too much of can ultimately hurt us more than silence ever could. One of the most immediate dangers of speaking too freely is the risk of exposing one's own vulnerabilities. In both personal and professional situations, words reveal more than we intend. When people talk without pause, they often offer clues about their insecurities, doubts, or incomplete thoughts. In negotiations, for example, those who rush to fill silence often reveal their true bottom line, their desperation, or their uncertainty, giving the other party the upper hand. I have witnessed this in meetings where colleagues, uncomfortable with pauses, hurriedly explained their position until they gave away strategic information that they never intended to share. Another danger of not embracing silence is the loss of control over the conversation itself. When you talk too much, you unconsciously hand over the power of the dialogue to the listener. You explain too deeply, defend too anxiously, justify too often, and in doing so, shift from confidence to defensiveness. I have seen friends in relationships or workplace discussions weaken their position simply by over-explaining themselves. Instead of standing firm in their choices or opinions, they felt compelled to offer reasons until their original strength became doubted in the eyes of others. Furthermore, people who do not practice timely silence risk being perceived as lacking depth. A person who talks without restraint, filling every gap with opinions, stories, or unnecessary details, may unintentionally create the impression of being shallow or insecure. True authority and credibility often come from knowing when not to speak. Think of the most respected leaders, mentors, or public figures. Their words are remembered not because they spoke constantly, but because they spoke wisely and rarely. Their silence gave their words weight. In contrast, someone who is always talking can lose the listener's attention, respect, and trust. In the world of business and creativity, speaking too soon can also have serious consequences. Many ambitious entrepreneurs have made the mistake of revealing their innovative ideas too early, only to see them copied by others before they could act. A close acquaintance once shared an exciting business concept at a casual gathering, thinking it was safe among friends. Months later, she was shocked to find a similar product launched by someone else, an expensive lesson in why premature sharing can harm future success. This is a classic example of how not knowing when to stay silent can lead to unintended loss. Moreover, excessive talking can blur personal boundaries. When you overshare about your personal life, your weaknesses, or your plans with others, especially with those you do not fully trust, you make yourself vulnerable to manipulation or gossip. It's not uncommon to hear stories of personal information being used against someone simply because they failed to practice discretion. Silence in such cases serves as a quiet protector. But perhaps the greatest harm comes not from what others do with your words, but from what excessive speech does to your own confidence. When you talk too much, trying to convince or justify yourself, you may begin to doubt your own position. Silence, on the other hand, allows you to stay grounded, to think clearly, and to reaffirm your inner strength without needing external validation. This does not mean that speaking up is wrong. It is essential to voice thoughts, opinions, and ideas. But knowing when to stop, when to hold back, and when to let silence speak for you is equally essential. It is the difference between confident restraint and anxious overexposure. In the end, the wisdom is simple but profound. Don't let your tongue cut your throat. Words are tools, and when used carelessly, they can become weapons turned inward. Silence is not weakness. It is a quiet shield, a subtle strength that protects far more than we realize. In a noisy world, the skill of staying silent at the right moment may be one of the rarest and most valuable powers we can develop. 4. How to cultivate the power of timely silence. In today's fast-paced and talkative world, knowing when to stay silent has quietly become a rare but powerful skill. Many people rush to fill the gaps in conversation, afraid that silence might make them seem uncertain or weak. But I've come to realize that silence, when used wisely, is not weakness, it is wisdom. There is truth in the old saying, "Still waters run deep." Those who are quiet often possess depth, thoughtfulness, and strength that noisy words can never convey. One of the most practical methods to develop this strength is the practice of pause power. This technique is simple but surprisingly effective. Pause for 3 seconds before responding to any question, statement, or comment. In these few seconds, the mind finds clarity, the emotions settle, and the words that follow are likely to be more careful, more meaningful. I found this habit useful in both personal and professional conversations. It prevents me from saying things I might regret and gives me the space to choose my words, not throw them carelessly into the air. Silence also teaches the valuable skill of observation. When I'm not busy planning my response, I can pay full attention to the other person, not just their words, but also their body language, tone of voice, and hidden emotions. Often, what people say is less important than how they say it. A smile that doesn't reach the eyes, or a confident statement made with nervous hands, these details are easy to miss when we are too quick to speak. Silence allows us to see these deeper truths, giving us better understanding and wiser judgment. Equally important is knowing when not to speak, especially when angry, tired, or confused. Words spoken in these moments are rarely helpful. They often carry frustration, misunderstanding, or unnecessary sharpness. In my own experience, I've learned to stay silent in heated moments, waiting until I feel calm and clear before expressing my thoughts. This habit has saved me from arguments, regrets, and misunderstandings. It reminds me that not every thought needs to be spoken, and not every feeling needs to be shared immediately. This approach is not about fear or holding back, it is about choosing the right time, the right mood, and the right reason to speak. I have seen that even in negotiations or important discussions, the person who waits, who listens, and who speaks last often holds more power. They make others wonder, reflect, and sometimes reveal more than they intended. Silence creates space, and in that space, strength grows. In the end, silence is not the absence of words. It is the presence of control. Like still waters that hide great depth beneath their surface, quiet moments can carry great meaning. Those who master this art do not lose their voice. They make it more valuable. Through patience, observation, and thoughtful timing, we can all learn to let silence become our quiet strength. 5. Conclusion. The quiet power within. As I reflect on everything I have learned about the power of silence, I realize that being the loudest voice in the room does not make someone the strongest. In fact, true strength often lies in restraint, and the quiet confidence of those who do not need to prove themselves with endless words. As the saying wisely reminds us, silence speaks louder than words. There are moments when saying nothing at all delivers a message far more powerful than any speech could. In this world where noise is everywhere online, in conversations and constant opinions, it is tempting to believe that being noticed requires speaking up all the time. But I have come to understand that thoughtful silence can set you apart even more. When you choose to remain silent at the right moment, people listen more closely when you finally speak. Your words gain weight, your presence feels stronger, and your mind appears more focused. Silence shows self-control, patience, and depth qualities that endless talking can never replace. You do not have to be the smartest, the fastest, or the most skilled person in the room. You only need to be mindful and timely. Silence gives you that gift, the power to pause, to think, to choose your response carefully. It allows you to lead a conversation not by force, but by calm presence. I've seen this not only in leaders and negotiators, but also in everyday situations with friends and meetings during difficult discussions. Those who master silence rarely lose their influence. In fact, they often gain more respect and trust. So let us not fear silence. Let us welcome it as part of our strength. In the quiet moments, we can find clarity, wisdom, and the confidence to speak only when it truly matters. After all, sometimes the most meaningful things are not said aloud. They are felt, understood, and remembered in silence. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.